conscious about the performance. Performance is such a big problem. Our counseling sessions are filled with problems that I'm not able to perform. First, understand there are 12 levels of intimacy. The bond between two people in a marriage should be like this. Nothing can come in between.
With so many young people learning about sex from the porn, how do we correct that narrative with the real, respectful sex education?
If somebody talks about dating apps, it is like more about sex rather than emotion connection. So emotional connection takes time. इनको तो हमेशा सेक्सी चाहिए, ये तो हमेशा रोती ही रहती है. This gap of understanding and education is also a killer. What our wants are, what our desires are, is very different from the next person sitting next to me. Even my own partner is going to be different. So how can everybody see one movie and say this is what sex should look like?
Today we are the most connected generation, but still we are the most loneliest.
I'm not saying right, wrong, good, bad, yes, no. All I'm saying is we had studied sex and sexuality as a science, as psychology, as art, as sociology. That sex is about orgasm only and pleasure only. Sex is very, very deep. Sexuality is very, very deep. So I think it is extremely important for you to dive into this topic and figure it out.
Namaskaram. Welcome to another episode on Who's on Air with Kamlaksh Shetty. Today we enter a space that is often whispered about but rarely spoken of with honestly sex, intimacy, consent and emotional connection. Our guest today is Niyati Shah, a certified sex educator, intimacy coach, author and counselor who has been working passionately to dismiss what's happening around the world. Awareness, confidence and emotional intelligence is what you're going to learn. India is changing slowly but surely. According to a 2024 survey by The Hindu, over 61% of urban Indian couples say they find it difficult to communicate openly about sexual desires. Meanwhile, National Family Health Survey shows an alarming lack of formal sex education even in tier 1 cities. So how do we address these gaps in knowledge, confidence and connection? Let's find out. And here we have Niyati Shah. Namaskaram and welcome to the show. It's so good to see you today. How's the day been?
Interesting. It's a Sunday morning. There were plans to just chill, relax. The families were still in bed when I left. And I'm like, you know what? I'm running. I have a podcast to go to. So this excites me more than just sleeping in bed and taking a chill pill. This is how I chill and this is how I glow, if I can put it that way.
You add a lot of glow into people's life in a very different way. I mean, you teach them things, you tell them things about how to lead their life. So today we are the most connected generation, but still we are the most loneliest.
Absolutely.
And why do you think people today are struggling more with intimacy and emotional connections despite dating apps and endless communication tools? Why is it so?
Yeah. So I think technology has definitely got us closer where we can talk to our loved ones, even if they are like Sat Samundar Par, as we say. But having said that, the physical energy that makes us feel closer, the emotion of feeling loved or seen or heard, that usually comes when the person is in that physical space with us. So we can chat with them, we can talk to them, but when they hug you, when they laugh with you, when they are high-fiving you, or though that proximity is important to feel connected. So that will always be missing in the world where digital devices are still available to chat, talk, see each other. But the connection specifically comes when we are doing things together, when we are in the physical space together, where I can see you completely when you are talking to me, you're laughing with me, we are doing errands together. So that is where the connection is a little missing. in the space where we are still feeling seen and heard, but not close.
It's called the swipe right culture
Yes.
or the swipe up culture, but no emotional connection.
No.
And see, like there are a lot of dating apps which are there. What I know, heard of is Tinder, which
Absolutely.
is one of them. They have changed the way how we understand consent.
Yeah.
So boundaries and expectations in relationship, what is it all about? How do we need to probably reconcile and come back to some smoother things?
I think when dating apps were introduced to the public, there were a lot of advertisements. So the focus point was you have a whole bank of people you can choose from. And slow and steady, people began thinking that I will find my partner here. But what they realized is the more choices they had, the more people they wanted to meet. So even if they've met the first person, second person, third person, they still wanted to go to the fourth, fifth, and sixth to see who is a better fit for them. So they tried the connection with more people. And then there became a culture where these dating apps only had very short partnerships.
Right.
So now if somebody talks about dating apps, it is like more about sex rather than emotion connection. So emotional connection takes time. People dropping their guard, being vulnerable takes time. You can only be vulnerable to somebody you can trust. And to build that trust takes time. So what was a faster way of going to the next person? Spending few dates, seeing whether sexually you're compatible or not, enjoy yourself, move on to the next. So what happened was consent became assumed. So if you are going and meeting a partner through a dating app, consent is already given. It's assumed that you've come here for this. Now what is there for me to ask you? So consent is taken care of. Boundaries, now that depends on the person of how they see their boundaries and how empowered they are to draw those boundaries and say only this much. Most of them are just, one, in a hurry, two, to be liked. They push the boundaries and they go beyond something that they're comfortable, thinking that what if I'm not liked? What if then nobody will want to date me? Oh, is sex the only thing that dating apps is asking for? Then okay, fine, I think I will have to be ready for it. So the boundaries were being pushed. People who knew their comfort zone or knew that this is where I want to stop have started pushing the limits, thinking that otherwise I won't get the person I want. So I think it is very important, even if you're going through dating apps or websites, you still need to be very clear about how much do I want to go on my first date, third date, fifth date. What is it that I really want to connect with the person with? What kind of conversations I want to have? And it's okay if it didn't work out. It's okay if my agenda was different than the person's. So to have that self-confidence is very important in today's times.
But then, as you said, 1, 2, 3, 4, it becomes endless.
It is.
Endless, and then probably it is termed like a maniac. It's a 3-lettered word, SEX.
Yeah.
Still we are very worried about it. So married but emotionally single still is what I'd say to people who are in a defined relationship. So I would say, is that a new epidemic which is there? So most married people feel disconnected from their partners.
Yeah.
What are the silent intimacy killers in this modern relationship which is happening?
Yeah.
Because we see a lot of, a married person also tries to jump.
Yes.
Because there's so much, the world has become smaller.
Yeah.
What is your say on this?
So, marriage as an institution is a promise to be together. And we're talking about married people, that's why, to be there for each other. That does not mean that we are stuck with one another. It literally means that if there is something lacking in this relationship that you are still looking for, but I'm not able to provide, let's sit down and talk about it. But now this needs honesty. This needs being vulnerable. But with the emotional baggage that we start creating from before marriage actually. So when the wedding is planned, how the differences start coming up between the two families, what one family wants, what the other one wants. वहाँ से ही emotional baggage शुरू हो जाता है. Your family did this, my family did this, I wanted this, you wanted this. And then living together, how our differences are how they come out on the table, how you deal with them, how your family treats one another. You know, when a bahu says, oh, your mother is like this and your father did this and your sister is treating me like this, where the husband would say that you're not taking care of my family, we were here together. So a lot of emotional baggage starts building up. That is the first intimacy breaker. When I am upset with somebody, how am I going to feel close to that somebody? When my wounds are not healed, how am I going to feel loved or loving towards that person? You have to be completely okay about that person to feel close to that person. Agar mujhe gussa hai, how am I going to show love? I'm going to show anger. Agar main upset hu, if I'm feeling not seen in your family, I am going to be sad and lonely, and you know, those emotions are in me. How am I going to give you my best self? So with marriage, one, you have to make sure that if you're upset with each other, you need to sit down and resolve it. You have to understand that one partner may come. So sex and emotion are like the sides of one coin, the relationship. So sometimes it's going to be a heads, sometimes it's going to be a tails, which is the emotion and the sexual side of it. So some partners begin with emotional side of connecting, and then they become compatible and comfortable with sexual side of theirs. Some partners begin by getting attracted sexually, wanting the sexual connection, then they start getting emotional about that person, and both are correct. So instead of saying, I am all emotional and all you want is sex, that's not the right way of seeing it. So it's okay if your partner wants sex first and then we'll start feeling connected. You have to give space and time. So it's okay if your partner wants to be emotionally connected first and then will, you know, align with you sexually. So a partner needs to understand these things. So that is also one intimacy killer. इनको तो हमेशा sexy चाहिए. ये तो हमेशा रोती ही रहती है. So this gap of understanding and education is also a killer. Sometimes it's physical health, you know, sometimes it's the age. Because, you know, till you are newly married, there's curiosity, there's fun, there's all of that, the honeymoon phase as we call it. Then within a year or two, you have children, then you become parents suddenly. So your role, which was only focused with the two of you, now is shared. And then there are house responsibilities, family responsibilities, all that comes between the two people. So the bond between two people in a marriage should be like this. Nothing can come in between. Nothing.
How do you build it up?
So by constantly reconnecting.
Okay.
बच्चे तो हैं ही ना. So it's not that you have to keep them outside the marriage. It's a part of you but around you. Nothing should come between the two of you. So for example, if every week I decide that yes, I am being a parent to my kids, the school, the tuitions, the classes, I'm taking care of my in-laws, I'm taking care of everything. I'm taking care of business, I'm taking care of work. But there is this one day I dedicate only to us. Let's go out on a date every Sunday. Where we sit down and don't talk about the work, don't talk about the kids, don't talk about the family, but let's talk about each other. What made you happy this week? What made you sad? Is there a challenge you're facing? Let me help you there. What can be done about it? What have you planned for the next week? How do I look today? What made you happy about me today? So talking only about feelings and plans about each other, that is where you come back as a couple. That is where you reconnect. And this reconnect is very important consistently. It cannot be assumed कि शादी हो गई तो connection हो गया. You know, in Hindus we have those yagnas.
Yes.
And in yagna, we don't light the fire and leave it there. We constantly put ghee in it.
Water
the
and
swaha. And you know, every mantra has that swaha. That is what is constantly needed in the relationship. Keep fueling that relationship.
This is because a beautiful analogy. Keep going. Yeah.
Sexuality, emotion, constantly is changing. It is in the form of a liquid. Wherever you will put, it takes that shape. So if you're going to have your relationship and intimacy put in a shape of responsibilities, it will look like responsibilities.
It should be both sides.
It should-
Conversation has to
responsibility.
happen.
See, your feelings with your partner, the intimacy that we're talking about is between only two people, no? So intimacy can be the ice around the bottle.
Sure.
Right? It could be like a sticker on the bottle, or it could be the handle of the bag. But what is in it has to be between the two of you. Everything is periphery. It's still a part of you, but this is the inner core of the relationship. So whenever we are talking about intimacy, see whether you are able to connect with each other. Are you able to be honest with each other? Can you tell your husband that, you know what, I love you to the core, but that man looks so attractive now.
You're talking about somebody else.
Somebody else. Why should it not? Because nature has given me that ability to feel attracted and be attractive at any age. Why? I am not going and having a relationship with somebody, but I should be okay to talk about how I feel, what I like, what I don't like, so openly to my partner. And if I'm not able to do that, if I'm fearing judgment, if I'm fearing that, oh my God, he's going to make me feel guilty about it, then the intimacy is broken.
How do you put it across, like to a man? Because he'll be jealous, you know, when he's talking.
Absolutely.
So what is the way out for that?
To reassure. Swaha. The reassurance has to consistently be there. See, the trust will be built. Once your partner watches you, sees you, knows that you're vulnerable towards this partner, towards me. If my husband comes and says that, like, you know, Bipasha Basu, like this used to be his favorite sometime. He's going to listen to this on a podcast. And when we would talk and when she's on the screen and, you know, he's like, see how she is. So for me, one, I entertain his desire. Yeah, see, you like this bikini on her. I'm also taking hints.
Okay.
As a partner, I am listening to him. I know his desires. I know his wants. I know his likes. And I'll do the best I can to reassure that, listen, I'm your Bipasha.
Okay.
That's my way of thinking.
Okay.
But my husband, when he comes connecting to me, he doesn't talk about Bipasha. He talks about me. He tells me how good I am, how I make him feel. That's just like one moment of something that he liked in the world. He spoke openly about it. So what makes these two people talk with so much vulnerability? Trust. That even if my partner is talking about somebody, in his heart or her heart, it's me. When I go to a garden and I see so many beautiful flowers and I talk about it, does not mean I don't like my home plants. I love them more than anything else in the world. That's why they're in my home. But it's okay for me to go and talk about something. It's just an example given. There are so many different things where we should be able to talk about it. So this is one. So reassuring when your partner is jealous, reassuring when your partner is doubtful, rather than feeling defensive about it. इतना भी trust नहीं है क्या मुझ में? मैं तो ऐਵੇਂ ही बात कर रही थी. Rather than defending yourself, if you can say, oh baby, but you're still the one. No matter who I look in the world, you're still the one. Go hug your partner. Go kiss your partner. Give that warmth and affection and reassure whatever I say and do, you're still the one. And the more swaha that happens, and it has to be genuine. It cannot be fake because your partner will know. So that's the way to keep reassuring. This is the swaha again. So this is one part of it. The other could be, I am feeling ashamed of how I have become. I was extremely fit when I was just like 5 years back. But something is going on with my, with my life, with my physiology, where I am putting on weight. But if I'm not able to tell my partner that, you know what, I'm feeling extremely down with how I'm looking. And if I'm not able to tell my partner that, what's the point? If I can't be vulnerable. What if my partner comes and says, "Kaisi ho gayi hai? You were so great 5 years back. What has happened to you? Why don't you go to the gym? Why aren't you walking? I don't feel attracted to you anymore." Or just quietly evades the bed or does not physically come close to me, is not having that sexual relationship with me. And then I start doubting, it must be my weight. I'm not looking sexy anymore. So the silence also is an intimacy breaker. So communication is important.
So going back to people looking for the apps and finding another partner. Is it because of the conversation is dead?
Yeah.
You're not more open and you want to find somebody else? Is that the
Yeah.
reason why this is happening?
Absolutely. Not only you're not open, it's just dead. You don't see how I should talk to my partner. You don't know the way out. You're done. You all the tools you had, you've used. It's not working anymore. So it's easier to go and talk to somebody you don't know.
And it's a cycle. You keep doing
It's a
it.
cycle.
So everybody is talking about sex, but no one is really talking about it the way you explained right now. The moment you start talking, so we come from a culture where we go to our ancient temples. If you see like a Khajuraho or the Sun Temple, the Konark, the periphery is always with images.
Yeah.
We come from a land with Kama Sutra was said each king had his own way of putting it across. Open culture, invasions, everything kind of downed it. We are a culture in the last 100 years, we suddenly got into parda to now. Now when we are starting to open up, we are doing it probably too drastically in a certain way. So we are uncomfortable about talking about it.
Yeah.
So it was a way of life. You kind of imbibed it in yourself that this is where it belongs. We are all born because of this. How do we begin building a healthier relationship through conversation, as you said, and sexuality in today's time?
This is something I so truly believe, a land of Kama Sutra, Khajuraho, and so many other means and ways where we were talking about sexually in an open space. So if you see, we are talking about temples. So it meant there was religion, but life was spoken outside, right? The kings who built it believed in it. The priests who were in the temple didn't mind it. They understood the importance of it. The people who were carving that knew exactly how to depict it. The local people who were living there saw it as a very normal thing. So where was the taboo? Not in the religion, not in the rich, not with the poor, not with the laborers, not with the owners, not with who was educated, not with who was uneducated. There was nobody who saw sexuality as something not to be spoken about or not to deal with it. So where did this culture come from? It came from those who came into our land with their conservative natures and brainwashed our people, forced them to start believing into something. That's where it all went out of the books. So today when we go to Khajuraho and we see that, dekho, yahan pe bhi to, there are threesomes, there are sculptures where there are threesomes, and then there is positions with animals, and there are so many different things that were depicted. I'm not saying right, wrong, good, bad, yes, no. All I'm saying is we had studied sex and sexuality as a science, as psychology, as art, as sociology. Why these textbooks are not covering that? Why is this not a topic that a mother would, just like she's teaching cooking, just like she's teaching responsibility to her daughter when she goes to, gets married and goes to another home. Why does she not talk about intimacy and sex and physiology and all of it, of how to be there for your husband, or even the other way around, for a man, how to be there for your wife? We don't talk about it. So coming to your question, how can we now start talking about it? Go back, touch the roots, figure out what was written in that. Figure out what was that ancient science. We all know now, by now, ancient science had a lot of wisdom. We all are following the Western culture, who's actually now going back to our culture. Because they figured their culture didn't work. It was superficial. It made them instantly happy, but then instantly sad also. So because the depth was not there. So they are coming to us to see the depth. So let's go back to our own home books. Let's understand, go to the experts, listen to them, go to the gurus who are talking about it, who can educate you. So read the books, go to these sculptures, listen to the priests there, listen to the so many different ways of touching base with our own culture. And understanding that this is something which is a big part of my life. And trust me, when I am counseling couples, the question is not, yes, there are basic questions like how many times you should have sex, but that's not the complaints they come for counseling. That's a question on a DM. It's not a question that they are struggling with. They're struggling with, I'm not able to have sex with my partner. So the answers does not lie like how many times you're having sex. The answer lies in what's the block? Where's the problem? Are you able to seduce your partner? Are you able to emotionally connect with your partner? So while you are educating yourself, healing is also important. So one, I spoke about educating yourself from different resources. Second is healing. Heal the parts that are not allowing yourself to be the real you. Don't fear in saying what your desires are. Don't fear in enjoying the pleasure. Don't have the fear in communication. Figure out how to be confident in, one, having the clarity of what you want, being able to communicate that with a lot of love and support, not out of judgment or not out of fear of how I'm going to be seen. My partner will think I'm too much, or my partner will think I'm shy. Just go speak your heart out. And it's okay to take support from somebody like a counselor or a psychologist or a communication expert to learn how to do that. It's okay. You go to a doctor, no? If you are having a cold and a cough, these are similar experts who will help you with these small things. So that is another way of healing and learning the skills. That is another thing we don't know of. We all learn these artificial skills from movies. रोमांस कैसा होना चाहिए, शाहरुख खान जैसा होना चाहिए. घर में नहीं चलता है.
So I will talk about, see, porn is the new teacher, would say.
I was coming to that, yes.
But should it be? With so many young people learning about sex from the porn, how do we correct that narrative with the real respectful sex education? Because you said you're coming to that.
Yeah.
You can continue from here.
Absolutely. So just as I was saying that, see, movies are a way of entertainment. There are some movies who will motivate you. There are some movies who will give you an idea of how romance can look like. Or some movies who will talk about empowerment, what it should look like. But they're not teaching you how to do it. Pornography, maybe it started with a very different audience. It was still conservative when it started. They were images. Then the movies started. Then the platforms, it came onto platforms which were now on the fingertips. The idea is to sell a concept, to sell a psychology. Is pornography just something that they build a script and do it? No. They know exactly what the audience would feel entertained with. They know what the audience psychology works. What are their desires which are not fulfilled? So they will come and see our movies because they're not going to get it in the real world. You're getting in that. So rather than using this understanding about individual desires and fantasies, we would rather put it in a movie and give it to them, which sells, because nobody's going to talk about it.
Do you think it's right or wrong?
It's absolutely wrong. Because when a movie is seen by, I'm giving a very small number, by 1,000 people, all the 1,000 think that is what sex is. When every of that 1,000 people have their own personal touch to their way of having sex or feeling intimate with their partner. Like every fingerprint is different. What our wants are, what our desires are, is very different from the next person sitting next to me. Even my own partner is going to be different. So how can everybody see one movie and say this is what sex should look like? It's unreal.
I agree with that.
So in one of the studies with pornography when we were doing, they show squirting from a woman's vagina. They show that, half an hour of thrusting or the play. That is how the woman is going to make all these noises. Not every woman makes noise. Not every woman needs half an hour. Even the men are struggling to have that erection for half an hour because it's not natural. What is natural? Natural is that it's going to take you maybe less than a minute or a minute and a half. It hardly takes the same amount of time when stimulated the way the woman is going to have the orgasm.
The body is
The
different for each.
body is different, the sensations are different. Each woman, each man, the stimulation on their body, the points where they will feel the excitement is different. Some women want to hear, some men want to be, how can I put this? Let me put it, dealt with differently, touched differently. Some people love role plays. Some people love games. Some people, so there are so many different things that people like. How can that one movie address what sex and intimacy should look like? Then movie is also about lights, camera, action, makeup, scripts, dialogues. Who's sitting in your bedroom to give you all these instructions? It cannot be that way.
It's very individual.
It's very, very individual. That is why communication is important, no? What do you like? When you naturally surrender to your body and to your wishes, automatically the ideas come in. Automatically the partner will be like, why don't you touch me here? When you ran that, when you pulled that silk scarf, what I was holding, that feeling of that silk scarf actually made me feel happy. Maybe we can use it when we are in bed together. Observation about your own body, observation of how different things feel to you. When you visually saw something, what did I like? Use the 5 senses to study about yourself. That is what is going to help you in bed. Not the pornography, which is so scripted. Again, it's in a screen. The energy is not felt. It can give you some ideas. It will give you some positions to try. It can give you some, maybe I can try the moaning and maybe it will help me. Maybe it will. But that cannot be your guide. That cannot be the resource to go to. It has to be you.
It creates a disillusion about life,
Absolutely.
right? So going back to our temples, what my understanding is, why it was done is because the periphery of life is this.
Yes.
When you go inside, you go and find your higher self.
Yes.
That's where the thoughts, the ideas and everything is, for each person, it is different, as you said.
Yes.
Right from the scarf pulling and all that would be. Here today, we are fighting a battle where self-worth and body shaming is also there between couples, partners, all that. What impact does body image have on sexual confidence? Like everybody has their own body types.
Yes.
Especially in a world of filters and fitness influences.
Yeah.
We are living in a fake world to an extent, because on screen you can put 100 filters and make yourself beautiful, nice. Okay, I want this kind of a look.
Yeah.
The expectations are high.
I think with a lot of industries and a lot of commercial products, if I can put it that way, that is where all this is coming from. Everybody wants to sell the product that they have. And then there is this generalized way of being that is being introduced. So I remember when I was a young kid, what my body should look like, it's a 36, 24, 36.
Yes, there was a 0 figure story also.
Then in the next decade, there was this size 0. Then now the next decade has something else. What I'm trying to say is, we are not telling people it is okay to be who you are or the way you are.
Consent is not a buzzword. It's a cultural shift today. From the generation which I came from. How do we teach people that consent is not a one-time question, but an ongoing, respectful process?
Yeah.
How do we teach?
So I remember my earlier generations where they were not specifically spoken about consent as a word, but respect was taught, self-respect and respect for others in different rituals, in different ways, whether it was Pai Lagu or Namaste or, Satriyakal. So they were taught respect not as a concept, but as an action. So your body, when it does an action, it also understands the concept. So wo abhi sab nikalta ja raha hai. That's not with this generation anymore. We are challenging those rituals and challenging those actions. But in that time, even the non-verbal ways were understood. So if the woman is kind of twitching or turning or even was understood, like, are you okay? So there was already respect woven into verbal and non-verbal ways, and people knew how to recognize that. Now, since all this is out of the window, with this new generation, with the new culture and the new exposure that they have, we now have to teach them in their way. So one of the very beautiful stories I use in my workshops or even in my counseling sessions, where I ask young adults, when somebody comes to your house or when you go out for coffee with someone, do you still ask, what would you like to have? Or have you already assumed that this person asked for mocha once and is going to drink mocha all their life?
The simple way of putting
Simple way of putting consent. Do you still ask or do you assume? So even if somebody says, no, today I'll have a latte, or today I'll have a flat white, or today I want to have tea, will you still ask what kind of what kind of coffee? Or if somebody says, okay, coffee is fine, what kind of coffee? Or chai, adrak wali? You'll still ask the further question, right? If somebody says, yeah, this is what I want. So you're still asking if they're okay, or you'll ask, what do you want? Right? Sometimes somebody says, yes, I want tea. And then you give them tea, and then the tea is too much for them to have. Is it okay if they leave some tea because they can't have it more? Will you just pour it down their throat? No. You'll be like, it's okay. So the same thing is about sex or about consent. Even if it is not the sex, even if it is about the hugs or the cuddles or the feeling or coming close together or kissing, let the person decide to what extent they want to go at each time. You don't have to specifically ask, like, can I touch you today? Yes, to that extent it's assumed because you're in a relationship or, that way. But if you can see non-verbally also that your partner is a little uncomfortable or is not enjoying the way you are enjoying, it's okay to take a step back and recheck. Are you okay? Would you like something different? Should I go ahead? So that is how consent should look like. And today's times, people are also very, very okay with taking advantage. So if a person is, there is a culture of drinking in today's youth or adults. Adults as in older people. But if the person is not in their senses and falls onto you or is flirting with you and you know that they are not in the right phase or right state of mind, don't take advantage at that point. That person might regret later because they didn't have control over what they were saying or what they were doing. Alcohol does that to you. So don't take advantage of people when they're not in the right state of mind. Halt, take a pause, take clues. Go back to them and say, you mentioned something like that. Are you okay that we do it now that you're okay and you can take a decision? So one thing I would like to put science here is so let me start from teenage, where the puberty starts and all this attraction and feelings start. This this age group, physiologically, their frontal cortex is not developed.
Okay.
There is no logic.
Till what age?
Till about 25.
Okay.
There is less logic, let me put it that way, not no logic. There is less logic. The logic kicks in after a few seconds to what an adult brain can do. Okay. So if you put a question in front of me in today at this age, I will be able to take a decision faster. But a teenager will take a little time to figure it out and then will be able to take a decision. So there's a delay in understanding the logic and the reasoning behind what is given to them. So a teenager, what drives them to make a decision is how they feel about it. Because that part of the brain is developed. Development starts from the back of the brain to the front of the brain.
Okay.
Feelings come right here, in between, in the middle. So before they can think or reason or, use logic, feeling is already developed. Okay. So the drive that they use to come to a decision is the feelings.
Okay.
If they feel good about it, they will do it, irrespective of what the consequence can be. That is why they drive rash. They are not trusted to take bigger responsibilities because they can't sit down and reason out the way an adult brain can. So their consent may look like, I feel good, so I do it. I didn't think, I felt, you were okay,
but
so I did it.
This experimenting which happens because at a certain age you want to smoke, you want to drink, then you want to try sex.
Yeah,
So,
because it makes them feel a certain way.
okay.
Feel good about it. I am cool.
Mm.
I'm independent. I'm fearless. I am confident. That's why they do all these things, to exhibit that.
So just probably it might sound very terrible to the people who are listening. What I see, the younger generation, they're okay with their sexual preferences. They're okay with the man to man, woman to woman. They
Yeah.
like that. Probably it was a taboo much back. Why is
Yeah.
it happening that way?
Because they are more confident about it. So generation to generation, there is going to be evolution also.
Okay.
So, and of course, we are also looking at the Western culture. But again, forget the Western culture. Indian culture itself was open about it. So why blame a teenager's age group that you all are very open about it? They are open about it. What the problem we have is they're not educated about it. They're not knowledgeable about it.
I'll come to the education part of it,
Yes.
but I have few questions which are still remaining with me. So men feel ashamed to talk about performance, women about desire.
Yeah.
What are some emotional blocks that people, especially in our country right now, struggle with when it comes to opening up about their needs?
Yeah.
What is it?
The judgment. Mainly the judgment. What is my partner going to think about me? So we are more driven to perform. We are more driven to be this perfect partner rather than accepting that there is something that's not aligning. It's not about lack or not. It's just not aligning. And then talk about it and come to a solution to it. So for example, you said men are more conscious about their performance. Performance is such a big problem.
Yes.
Our counseling sessions are filled with problems that I'm not able to perform. So the anxiety whether I'm able to satisfy my partner or not, the anxiety whether my organs are of the particular size or not, the anxiety of what my woman is going to think about me as a man. Am I fulfilling? Am I being the man that she's going to desire even tomorrow? These questions are eating the man alive. But the man will not ask. Because asking is seen as being weak.
They need to reach out to somebody, people like you.
Absolutely. Genuinely go find out how would a woman feel when you would ask? Are you okay with how the performance is going, or are you okay with what I'm doing with you? Would you like me to do something more? These questions is going to make you more of a man than keeping quiet and taking information from outside and then giving it to a wife who might not want it. So you are more of a man when you're aligning yourself with your woman, not with what others are telling you to do. You're more of a woman when you are aligning yourself to your man. So if my man loves the way I look, maybe with open hair, I'm going to keep my hair open. If my man says, I love the kajal that you wear, I'm going to wear it for my man. Not for the other woman that I should make her feel jealous, or not because I feel very beautiful. Of course, I should also do it only if I'm comfortable in it. But why would I not do it for my man? That makes me more of a woman. So when I am loved by my man for the way I am, and when I take that confidence and that love with me inside and present myself to the world, I will glow, I will shine.
Wow.
My confidence level will be here. Not by the other men who are rating me and liking me on Instagram and my pictures. When my man says it, when my woman says it, when my parents say it. Because so many parents shame their children also.
How should we stop it?
And again, healing. All this is coming from the space of lack.
Okay.
And no confidence in ourselves. And by listening to the world and the constant chatter that you need to be a certain size or a certain way or a certain skin tone. When you become confident, when you become powerful, you'll be able to give that power to your children.
So what you're saying is self-empowerment, and
Absolutely.
it has to start from the schooling days, which you do at this point of time, and you're widely known for it also.
Yes.
See, there was a time when sex education was there to an extent.
Yes.
In schools, right now, if what I've heard of, I feel it's outdated. And does it still exist? That's one question. what should real sex education look like in this year and here on, and how do we push it into a mainstream education?
Yeah. So sex education is happening in schools much more than what it used to happen. It's some schools are still stuck to explain periods to girls and our sex education is over. But the schools have taken steps to explain safe and unsafe touch, which is basically preparing them for any sexual abuse that can happen later or at that point in time with children specifically. I'm talking because we're talking about schools. So they are touching upon these topics. School counselors are taking up a lot of problems that children are going through. Having said that, when I go to a school, the school has a certain topics they want their children to know. But we always begin by asking children what they want to know.
And
so
they're very excited.
They are so excited to see who is this person who is so gutsy, who wants to come and talk about these topics to us. Chalo, aaj hum, they think they're ragging them, okay? We'll ask them these questions. We'll embarrass this person who's coming, and we'll talk about things that nobody talks about. Let's see if she can answer. So this is the attitude the children come and sit in the class. And then, so I have in mind what the adults want the message to be passed on to the children. But my way of working is, I will tell children, listen, this is who I am. I talk about these topics very widely and absolutely unapologetically. I'm giving you one chance because I don't know when I will see you again. I have 1 hour. Let's make it happen. Give me any question you have in your mind. Anything. You do not have to filter them. And then they will write all this thing, for the fun of it. And that whole chit comes to me. That whole bowl of chit comes to me.
Okay.
I quickly go through the first 20, 25 chits. I get an idea.
What
kids are asking. And then I'm like, okay, I've got a gist. Now I'm going to tell you what you want to know. Then I take the message the adults want to give them, what the children want to hear, bring them to a language that they can understand, and then deliver.
So what is the language which is with them? Because I feel today's kids know a lot.
Yes,
social media,
they do.
Friends, everything.
Yeah.
What is the language do you use when things like teaching them?
Yeah. One, simple. No jargons.
Okay.
No scientific jargons. Simple language. So when I'm talking about nobody should touch your private parts. Private parts, definitely, but I name them. I become very specific. I talk about, it's age appropriate. So even if I'm talking about consent, if I'm talking to a 6th grader, I will give examples and tease stories, enact it out, bring them on stage, give them the script, they act it out. Because when they are involved in it, when they experience it, they understand it better. When I'm speaking about consent to a 12th grader, I speak about online dating. I speak about you're going to go meet people. So from their real life environment, real life scenarios, real life experiences is how I teach them.
Are you judged when you do this?
I don't know because I don't ask.
Okay, go on.
So the fact that the school is calling me again speaks a lot.
No, I'm talking generalized because we all come from different places, different thought processes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But having said that, that's a very small part of the audience that I have who might say that, oh, how can you talk about this?
Very good.
Most of them come and say, oh, how do you talk about this? So there's more curiosity and appreciation and acknowledgement that I know that today's generation needs this. I know today's generation parents need this. That's where I think I'll very quickly touch upon the books that I've written.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
Start, please.
So the books, when I wanted to write, a lot of publishers came and write a book, but I didn't know what did the people want. So schools helped me and they became my field work.
Okay.
So once I started understanding what kids want to know, it all began shaping into a book.
Okay.
This book is like a textbook that is on a child's shelf for the 5 years of the initial puberty time.
From what age?
From the age of 8 or 10, because it's all about the physical changes, the emotional changes that these children are going through at the puberty level, the adolescence time, the phase. The book was supposed to be read by the kids. That's why they are colorful. They are full of illustrations. Their language is how they understand, with all the characters from movies and cartoons and the bro language, if I can put it that way.
Oh.
So the language is something they resonate with. You're
Okay.
getting it? That simple stuff, simple understanding.
What's the name of the book?
2 books. One is for the girls, one is for the boys. So the girls' book is called When Girls Grow Up.
Wonderful.
The boys' book is called When Boys Grow Up.
So simple.
Having said that, When Girls Grow Up have a chapter on boys.
Ah.
So whatever you are going through, please be rest assured, boys are also going through that. You are not alone.
Hmm.
And in the boys' book, there is a chapter on girls. Because there's a lot of requests that please explain periods to my boys also.
Hmm.
They don't know how to deal with the girls who are in their class, at home, the sisters, the cousins. So I knew also from the children's side that they both want to know about each other. So the chapters are also included in their books.
Very beautiful.
So
Everybody thinking now, I mean, especially me sitting here, you think we know it all, but there's a lot to be learned.
Yeah.
And I think with each decade, we need to probably revamp this, put it in a different, because children are
Yes.
also learning.
yes,
When you
absolutely.
said 8th standard, I think it's right. I mean, my personal view, okay, that's the right age to actually put some thoughts. So is it for just the boys' school, co-ed? How do you teach when it comes to
So
boys?
just a small correction. It's not 8th standard, it's 8 years.
8 years? Oh, sorry.
Because in today's times, the puberty is hit way earlier than what my generation experienced. Girls are getting their periods by 9 and 10 years of age.
Sorry,
and
is there a reason for this?
Yeah, there are many. The lifestyle has changed.
Yes,
The consumption of food has changed. So everything affects the physiology. So puberty is also hormonal. So if your physiology is affected, hormones are also affected. There's a lot of hormones that we are pumping into our body through skin, through different products that we use, the food we consume.
That
So there's a
affects the
lot.
skin?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's all being absorbed. Outer organs and internally. So yes, there are multiple reasons to that. Having said that, 8 years for girls, and just very important point here for the parents or the adults who are directly involved in dealing with children and teaching children, speak about sex education before they experience it.
Hmm.
Prepare them for what's coming. So don't talk about periods after they get periods. Talk about it before, so they're prepared for it. While you're talking about periods to girls, speak about wet dreams to boys. Speak about erection to boys. Speak about it when they are younger. Speak about attraction. Speak about relationships before it happens, so that they are ready when it happens.
So, superb. Last question.
Yes.
Intimacy isn't just physical, it's presence. This was in my mind, back of my mind. In today's hyper distracted world, how do couples rebuild emotional? You
Yes.
answered it, but still, rebuild emotional intimacy and feel truly seen by one another. Just one tip for the people.
First, understand there are 12 levels of intimacy. So read about it, because
Okay.
we need to understand what is actual intimacy. It's about feeling close to your partner. So the only tip which is most powerful is to constantly reconnect with your partner and keep checking with each other. See verbally, non-verbally, is my partner seen enough? Does he or she feel seen enough, heard enough? When they are talking, listen to them without interruption. Compliment them, appreciate them, acknowledge their efforts in the relationship. All this will bring you closer together rather than constantly defending yourself. Make it more about them than about you in the relationship.
Quick questions.
Yes, of course.
The one myth about sex you wish everyone would stop believing. It can be one word, two words.
That sex is about orgasm only and pleasure only. Sex is very, very deep. Sexuality is very, very deep. So I think it is extremely important for you to dive into this topic and figure it out.
What's more intimate? A kiss, a hug, an eye contact.
Eye contact,
Need to practice good eye contact, I would say.
and very genuine.
Most surprising questions people who meet you ask you is, what is that ever been asked?
Surprising, no. But shocking, how do I get a chick in bed?
How do I get a?
Chick in bed. Like, how can I get a girl in bed?
Achha, people,
Shocking.
married people also ask.
Doesn't matter, married, not married, young, old,
So they want a
quick fix.
quick fix.
But that gives me an insight to understand that they are sex starved and they are wounded somewhere. It's not about the perversion that's coming out. There's much more deeper inside which is making them ask me that question.
One book or movie which gets intimacy right. Recommend.
Nothing that's on the top of my mind, but I think I would like to begin with 2 books.
Okay.
One is a book called Models, and one is a book called The Art of Seduction by Seema Anand.
Okay. Any movie if you think of?
Mm,
It's okay in case
No.
something comes to your mind.
not a movie person anyways.
Okay. If you could add one line to India's sex education syllabus, what would that be? You've written books, but what is one thing you should add to the syllabus right now?
Train the teachers also to take the curriculum forward. The teachers are not trained. The biology teachers are not able to explain the reproductive system, which is a part of physiology. How will you ever be able to explain sex education, which is beyond physiology?
Last one. Red flag in a relationship which most people ignore.
Disrespect.
So you mean to say always respect your partner? Respect can happen in one day or it will take years, but build it up.
No, respect is from moment one.
You should keep it to that, right?
Yeah, from moment one to the last moment.
Wonderful.
Just respect.
That's one super hack, I would say.
Yes, it is. It is.
Superb. So good
Thank
to hear
you.
you. And you are an encyclopedia, I would say. People should meet you, read your books. And we like to see you in a different light as we move on, because you know you are learning, you're still getting a lot of information, and you know what is needed for the times right now. Niyati Shah,
Thank you
super
so
to
much.
hear you.
Thank you.
So much for being with us.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. It was a wonderful topic that you've touched. Of course, with my all these years of learning and giving out, there's so much to talk about sex and sexuality, and looking forward for that second one too. Thank you so much.
I too, because probably there are a lot of questions should happen on
Yes.
this particular episode where they can write their questions. Say, okay, we would like to hear from you, and that's going to happen. Thank you. Super talk with Niyati Shah. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear this, especially parents who like to put it across to their kids in a certain way. We like to hear your comments on this particular podcast, and we would like you all to definitely share as much as possible. Subscribe, that you should, and put in your comments about what you need to hear more about it. Thank you so much. Who's on Air with Kamlak Shetty.